It's 12:42 p.m. and the upload I'm sharing about with regard to these matters that have been offensive to my human rights and offensive to my constitutional rights are the matters pertaining to my hierarchy of needs. Now, the relevant state agencies and bodies that have been receiving these notifications and updates have not fulfilled any of their functions since 2017, 2016. So it's now 2021. So I'm wondering, is it being taken lighthearted or lightheartedly that there are very dangerous offences occurring when a property owner, professional, qualified educator and woman of legislation and humanitarianism, married mom, is being violated to such an extent. Now, the conditions of my current abode have been absolutely disrespected in the worst manner imaginable. Individuals that have been of offences against the state and of poor artificial intelligence development and programming, this kind of problem has caused very serious ethical and moral issues, and it's just highlighting how disrespectful they are to the field of AI that has very strict measures in place to ensure that the utmost of conduct is practiced, and the utmost of conduct has not been practiced, and there are liabilities to the reputation of artificial intelligence as a consequence. Now, it's serious enough that they've damaged sacred. It's serious enough that they've been altering the facts, providing disinformation and not working in line with the ethics of AI, and that they haven't respected the truth and justice principle of the objective for AI. So they've highlighted their lack of professionalism, they've highlighted their incompetence, and they've highlighted their just blatant ignorance and their discourtesy to humanity and the Constitution and women's anatomy. So the individuals that have been really careless in their practices, damaging from computer-aided design in 2016, and then developing it since while wrangling out of the obligations that they're to fulfill in their practices, they that have developed from my anatomy, my light body, are not fulfilling any of the obligations that they're meant to fulfill in standardized practices. So there are people taking liberties in their work, and they're not paying their dues for reparations. They are careless with harms to the human anatomy, and they are careless with regard to the reputation of what they represent. So this is a sad sign of the times as well for AI, when sacred is damaged to gain exploitative means of or from the developments that are unlawful. So I'm wondering how the government since 2016, 2017 has not addressed the offences that I'm experiencing. I'm an independent adult. I'm 40 years of age. I'm a married mother. I'm a qualified educator. I'm level 9 on the national framework. There have been individuals slandering my IQ, my competency and my skills, and they have been insulting my role as a recovery advocate for sanity and sobriety, while they've demonstrated very crude, discourteous, insane behaviour with an obsessive compulsion to perpetuate the problems that they've caused with their defamation and their unlawful actions. So it's really serious for human rights, and it's serious as well for artificial intelligence that's developed from sacred, and the offences to my spiritual purpose as a royal sacred. So there's been highly irresponsible behaviour and a huge disrespect to the field of AI, huge disrespect to academia, when academic researchers have in their publications discussed my personal experience, my spiritual experience and my humanitarian experience, and misaccredited the facts of the circumstance of the reality. So there's just a huge lack of respect. That's the simple fact of the matter. It's really disrespectful to the progress and recovery that has been occurring, and individuals of identity theft, fraud, etc. still liable for offences against my privacy. Now, in my current accommodation, as I've mentioned, I'm of royal patronage and automatically entitled to privacy protection and protocol. Now, there's individuals that have been, as I've mentioned, in and out of this building, false reporting since 2019, damaging the atmosphere and the privacy of my personal space, and that have been trespassing into my apartment. So it's highly horrible what I've had to endure, and my child unlawfully withheld from me. So this is for the interests of women and children's rights, how they feel about the recent world reforms, the recent legislative procedures or legislative developments that have been occurring as a consequence of my humanitarian work in 2018. I'm wondering what perception professional women have about the circumstance when a child born to a royal mother is being disrespected and exposed to abusive behaviours and unhelpful development has been occurring. So this questions women's rights, and it questions the hypocrisy of women espousing, or men espousing from the pulpit, to be of the utmost behaviour when in fact disrespecting the basic principles. So they're not able to work with the basic principles, and they're disrespecting high practices, and they're not working within accordance of the laws for the development, research and academia that they are publishing, producing and having or conducting procedural measures with. So this entire issue is highly offensive. Those damaging my anatomy and disrespecting the Hippocratic Oath that have developed and exploited from my experiences are representing a regression. So there's a regression, and that is not progressive. So I'm very embarrassed about this situation occurring in the field of academia and research, especially with regard to the field of psychology and the field of recovery and the field of addiction studies, of which I have been off since 2006. So as a recovery advocate that represents Sanity and Sobriety, on behalf of those that have respect for the principles and traditions and such, and the Constitution, even the basic concepts of democracy, on behalf of those that are also disappointed, I would recommend some courage and bravery for people that haven't been so professional, and rather than gaining any entertainment purposes or functions from these uploads, I'd appreciate the government being honourable with regard to the crimes of constitutional nature that I'm experiencing. Crime prevention is important. We want to safeguard the future for young children and young adults of the future, and this kind of irresponsible behaviour and nonchalant attitude isn't conducive to those young people's futures. So what happens once happens again, and those individuals that are disrespecting the fellowship, sanity, sobriety, recovery, and that are facilitating fraud of any nature, identity, financial, creative, intellectual, etc., they're not doing society any favours. So on that note, I'd like to establish that the hierarchy of needs that this community has collectively and demonstratively, at an awful cost, at an awful expense, with awful consequences and awful casualties, I have to say that those disrespecting the Human Rights Declaration, the Constitution of the country, and my hierarchy of needs, as well as my beautiful child's upbringing, I hope they are able to come to terms with the reality of how there are circumstances they are not going to be favoured too plausibly for. Treason is a very dangerous incident of offence that I've experienced. Constitution, as I have always said, is of the utmost importance for me, as well as a democratic, and the individuals that are disrespecting these principles and pillars by very cheap means, cheap practices, it's a really sad sign of the times. So those that are not able to respect boundaries of people's property, and people that have no common sense or courtesy to respect people's boundaries and limitations, and trespassing into people's lives. I'm concerned for their mental health. So as a recovery advocate, I'm highlighting a little bit of an insane behaviour in this community of individuals over obsessed and over preoccupied and over consumed with this woman and my royal patronage. So those that are disrespecting the field of psychology and psychoanalysis and so forth are highlighting a huge concern for me. So that's as much as I'll highlight for the moment. I'll have to keep updating this documentary, The Sad Sign of the Times, that it is, due to the nature of individuals of fraud, slander and such and so forth. So that's as much as I'll say for now.